And I also have the privilege today of introducing Brant Kingsley, a guy many of you have probably never heard of, doing something right under your noses that you probably aren't aware of, but producing results that we should all be excited about. Brant is a born and bred Yorker, a product of Central and York Suburban Schools and York College of Pennsylvania. After graduation, Brant launched a pretty conventional career in York with Marquette Investments, doing marketing work for 7 years before becoming a vice president of Marquette and president of one of their subsidiaries. But as Brant will tell you, that conventional career was just a front for a guy who grew up in a military and religious household, called to serve the community and specifically to serve youth. Brant launched Pedal for Peace in 2017 as a side project and a labor of love, and it quickly got national and in fact international attention. Pedal for Peace has very quickly made a major impact in York and has grown quickly to become a highly effective program that engages youth using cycling as a hook, and not just engages youth, but engages teenagers, a particularly hard to reach group, as any of us or you who've had them will attest. Brant's here today to tell us his story and that story and what the future holds in York and around the world for Pedal for Peace. Please welcome my good friend, Brant Kingsley.
What an intro. Thank you very much, Mr. Menzer. Or Eric, as he always tells me to say, says, call me Eric. And I'm always like, Mr. Menzer. And man, I'm so honored to be in front of everybody today and be here with the Rotary. And looking back, say my leadership York mentor, Jules back here, Julian Talbert. Man, thank you for everything and all of your help, Jules. So where do we start? You know, I only got 20 minutes and I'm long-winded. I like to speak, so I got to get started here. So before we actually get into the presentation, I kind of wanted to take you through a timeline of what's happened. So I was watching a documentary one time. At one point, I was like 230 pounds, right? And I was working. I was like completely stressed out. And it was crazy. It had gotten to the point where like my hair was starting to fall out. I had developed like alopecia because of like stress, right? So I watched this documentary. These guys ride these bikes across the U.S. in like 9 days. They were riding like 200-300 miles a day. I thought it was like incredible. And so I got this brilliant idea. You know, I was like, I'm going to go to the pawn shop and I'm going to get a bike. So, you know, I started riding. And at the time, I thought that 4 miles was a lot of riding. You know what I mean? I'm like, man, this rode 4 miles, which now my son and I will run 4 miles and I'll ride 100 miles in a day for childhood cancer awareness, right? So I got this bike, and in my amateurness, right, if I could say that, I decided to ride a full suspension with trail tire bike to Ocean City, Maryland. And I used the rail trail as the way to get there. It was a disaster. The entire trip was a disaster. But along that trip, I met some of the most incredible people that I've ever met in my life. I was in the middle of Delaware, and there was a store called the Old Country Furniture Store. And I did this in July. So, I mean, the whole thing was just downhill, right? And I was exhausted. I was so tired. And I seen this store that said Old Country Furniture Store, where I walked inside. I had met a lady named Miss Margaret. Now, this is an African-American coming out of the country. I mean, it was Old Country Furniture Store. It's all cornfields around this store, right? And she let me go upstairs. She let me literally go to sleep for an hour on a mattress that had plastic on it. She woke me up then, prayed me out, packed me lunch, gave me this huge hug, and sent me on my way, right? And later on that trip, I met another gentleman named Mike, who had just gotten back from a missions trip in Guatemala. And he actually told my fiance how to make it down to Ocean City where we were, told me about his business. You know, it was this phenomenal trip. So when I got back home from that trip, I was riding my bike and I was coming up Market Street, and I seen this group of kids doing wheelies in the middle of Market Street in front of the library. And I was like, that is so dangerous. But the facial expression that I seen was nothing but joy. And I could relate to that at this time because, you know, I'm losing weight. I felt like I was starting to look decent again. You know, I'm like, I like where these guys are at. So I contacted people on Facebook. I'm like, hey, have you seen any of these kids that are riding around the city right now doing wheelies? So people started telling me, you know, they're here. So I finally tracked them down. And the one day I was sitting at a friend of mine's restaurant, the Stakeout. And he's like, bro, you should start a program. And I was like, man, I'm not starting a program. I'm just a guy trying to pedal for peace and keep some kids out of trouble. He's like, that's what you should call it. So the second picture that you see in the middle there, we had our first ever Ride Against Violence Pedal for Peace. And we had about 150 different people come out for that ride. And we literally rode through every high problematic area in New York City. They would call them hoods, right? But we went through like Parkway, South Side, Duke Street, everywhere where there's high crime and violence. And we graffitied everything in chalk, words of peace, words of love. I mean, we had city council members out with us. We had a judge out with us. And the amazing thing that had happened was at the time, they had just had the shooting in Orlando at that club. And then remember, there was a shooting at that church in Texas. And there was the terrorist activity that had happened where he had ran over the people in Manhattan with the bikes. So the next thing we know, my brother and I, that's sitting right there, are in New York, in Manhattan, talking with like 13 different news outlets, you know, in a display of peace and just encouraging people up there at this event. When that happened, we ended up coordinating 19 different organizations in 19 states, the whole way from Maine down to Florida, including Texas, Nevada, and Arizona. As I said, those shootings had just happened, the mass shootings at the church, the club that was in Orlando. So what we did is I rented a truck, we loaded up youth from York here and drove the whole way to Florida. We camped out at south of the border in South Carolina, then drove the rest of the way down to Florida, ended up camping out on the beach. They swore to God the alligators were gonna come out and get us in our tents. I'm like, guys, there's no alligators where we're at right now. And the incredible thing that happened, the very next day we woke up and we seen Le Tour de Burundi, hashtag pedal the number 4 peace, which is our hashtag, you know? So at first we're like, hey, you just jacked our hashtag. But at the same time, we were super intrigued, like what's going on? So we reached out to them and they told us that they had been following us since we had got started. Now, mind you, we launched the first ride September 23rd of 2017. This is November 25th that we did the ride in Florida. November 26th, Burundi posts this. So they tell us they had been following us and that the president would love if I come to this event. I'm like, what? Like the president of what? I'm like, show my fiance and everybody in the truck. I'm like, what is going on? Don't you know that his security council issued an invitation for me? They expedited my vaccinations at Penn State Hershey. I had to go back and forth to the embassy in Philadelphia. I didn't even have my visa. They allowed me to fly out of country. I didn't even have a visa. They met me in Kigali, Rwanda, and brought me into Burundi, where I got to ride with the president and several national teams from the EAC, which is East African countries. And I could have put a way better picture than the USA shirt there, but I feel like it's awesome. So I posted that one up because I was the only American in attendance for that event. And I had actually got that cycling uniform there from, this is a 1972 Olympic jersey that I had got when I was up in New York and I was actually getting all my paperwork and documentation together for the trip and they had given it to me. So when I got back from Burundi, a friend of mine's father works for the UN for the country of Angola, and he calls me up there to the UN in New York. So now I'm at the UN. Little guy started on a bike right here from New York, right? And he's like, first of all, I want to tell you that you're crazy for going to Burundi, Africa with people you met off of Facebook. But thank God you're safe and you made it back home. And so then he says, but I want to help you out. I think what you're doing is amazing. So to date, I've been in 11 different countries with my bike. I've been in China. I've been in Istanbul, Turkey. I've been in Qatar. I've been in 8 different countries in Africa, all riding for a display of peace where we visit orphanages. We ride with national cycling teams. I've met some of the most incredible people in my life. And then I got invited by the UN to the United Nations Global Leadership Summit, where I got to go down, and that's the picture there in the middle. And it was just amazing to see what could happen. And I listened to a guy named Tony Robbins sometimes, and I listened to these different speakers, and he would speak about how purpose is more powerful than object. And it was amazing how when I wasn't after, certain monetary gains or certain fulfillments in life, when I saw purpose, how God just opened all these doors. And I have to give all glory to God because there's nothing else that really speaks to how and what has happened in my life. So to date, just last week, I got back from Kenya, where we just launched the official first ever Pedal for Peace International branch in Kenya with the national cycling team, which was probably one of the most emotional trips I have ever been on, because the amount of impact and joy that came from that trip, from watching people that barely have anything, that were still able to sit there and they were worshiping God and singing a song in Swahili saying, we thank you, God, for waking us up today and everything you've done. And I'm sitting there looking at kids that have ripped shirts on, no shoes. And I'm just thinking in our heads, like, man, how gluttonous and greedy we can be sometimes. We don't know how good we have it back home until we maybe visit somewhere like this. So there was an older group of orphans that I took some soccer balls down to, and it was amazing to me how incredible these kids had got with a soccer ball that was made out of rubber bands. I asked the guy, I said, sir, do you know how many rubber bands it took to make this soccer ball? Because, I mean, how many rubber bands is that? It was huge. It was like a game soccer ball all out of rubber bands. And I just thought that was incredible. And I say this to say to this room that I was once a juvenile delinquent. You know, I came from a good household. My dad's military. My mother's a Southern Belle, has a doctorate in theology. But at one point in time, I had got lost. You know, I once was lost, but now I'm found. And I found that through developing certain incantations for myself and certain affirmations and seeking the kingdom first, that my past doesn't dictate my future. You know, I'm better today than I was yesterday, and I'll be better tomorrow than I am today. You know, if you don't want to talk about perfection or talk religion, let's talk about being better. You know, and that leads me into the presentation for Pedal for Peace. And this year, our campaign is called the 2021 Pedal for Development campaign. So last year, just to recap quick, while COVID was going on, because we're an outside bike program, it was incredible for us. You know, I love the mountains. You know, my family, we bike, we snowboard in the winter when it gets cold. And so everybody was like trapped in their house because of COVID, and we were outside and in the mountains. So last year, thanks to the Powder Mill Foundation, the W. Dale Brocker Foundation, Parliament Arts Group, thank you to Eric Mender and the Rev Stadium for everything that they did. We were able to get a bus where we were able to transport kids. We've been these kids that normally never even leave the block or the area that they're in have visited just about every single mountain bike park inside of a 2-hour driving distance. We attend and we hold Ride Against Violence ride outs here in New York, but we've also been to Philadelphia. We've been to New York. These kids have been down to Florida. We've taken them. Our family has almost 200 acres up near Raystown Lake. Well, my fiance's family, but it's my family, right? So we were able to take these kids that never leave their block, kayaking, paddleboarding, downhill mountain biking, and through these experiences, instead of approaching these youth, because we have just about 150, it's 148 in our program right now, between the ages primarily of 11 and 18. Most of my guys right now, because we're getting older, are 13 and 19, right? A very difficult group to reach. But what we did is where a lot of people approach these youth and these teens and tell them what they shouldn't be doing or what they can't do. We wanted to incentivize better behavior through experiences. So if you do this, this is what we can achieve, right? So what it did is it started to instill a certain level of being able to achieve certain goals, you know, and realize instead of me saying to you, well, let's set goals and achieve them in this way, we would just lay out the map. And then once certain things happen, you could achieve certain things. You know, everybody wants to go on trips. Everybody wants to get a bike. Everybody wants to do certain things. But in order to be able to do that, you have to go through certain things, and I'll get into that here. So our 2021 Pedal for Development campaign, and this is one of my favorite quotes. I had to take some different classes here in the last couple of years, and I was taking a course from Geneva University. All the international travels obviously led me into, I just love everything about international travel. So, but anyway, before I go on a tangent, like I said, I like to talk a lot. You know, I got 20 minutes, so I'm gonna keep it straight. Without peace, there is no development, and without development, there is no peace. So we know that startup organizations, it's not hard to start something, but it's very hard to sustain them, you know? And that's something that has been difficult for all types of organizations, especially how everybody has had to pivot here in the last year with COVID, you know? There's people that didn't make it through the COVID crisis because they weren't able to do the pivot, and they weren't able to create certain sustainability models in that. You know, hence this year we're pushing to the brink of greatness with groundbreaking major impact. 2021 is set to launch YC BMX, which is York's first BMX race team that will nurture extreme sports athletes, all while taking the outreach of the Pedal for Peace youth program to the next level. Our program focuses on boys and girls ages 11 to 18 in an urban demographic. Now, out of 140 plus, I would say maybe about like 5 or 6 of them are girls, you know, which we don't discriminate against girls. It's just that a lot of the youth that we deal with are young men or teens and little boys. So I just wanted to place up some budgets, right? Because I don't want to get into politics, but I was listening to Scott Perry one time, and he said that finance is function. And this started out as an organization. I would meet with 4 kids. It was me and 4 kids that would meet at a McDonald's. And now we've grown to the point where we're getting ready to literally launch Hub One, which is our first bike shop. And the model around Hub One is to rejuvenate, educate, and innovate the mindset of these youth. So last year, as a portion of that, we had something called Urbanomics, which was made to inspire more urban entrepreneurialism. Because if inner city youth can listen to all this different hip hop and rap music, and they talk about the plug and straight off the boat, I like to talk to them. Well, what does that look like in legitimate business terms, right? That's a wholesaler, a producer, distribution. Now we're talking logistics. So how do we apply that to different things? So we have our headquarters that we run off of 531 West King Street. We have our insurances for the bus and different things that happens. We have internet that comes out of there. And then we have a warehouse location right around the corner from that serves as our storage, because we have some different trailers and different things like that. Mr. Menzer last year, and the event that we did at the stadium was called the Urban Stadium Race. So we had 2 companies build ramps and features for that. So we were able to keep all these things indoors and keep them out of the rain. Our youth program runs April through November, and we just slow down public activities in November because we do a huge bike giveaway for Christmas every year, where we've given away almost 400 bikes to date. So in our youth program, you have Hub One, which is the bike shop. You have our junior mechanics class, which is one of my favorite things. So what our junior mechanics class is, right, is in inner city, you hear about, I'm sure you hear about statistics all the time, right? How dads are incarcerated, mom might be working 2 jobs. So nobody ever really gets the chance to teach these kids about tools. So what we do is, if they need a bike, we bring them into our program. And first of all, to get a bike, you have to build a bike to give away to somebody else. But if you don't know how to build the bike, we take you through our junior mechanics class. So we teach them SAE to metric and tools. We teach them everything from their Allen wrenches to their adjustable wrenches, and really how to service a bike. And what we do is we strip a bike completely down to the frame, crank out of it. If you don't know what a crank is, the crank is the thing that you pedal on, all the brakes, the chains, we break the chain off, and then we make them rebuild it back up. And then they have to actually test out of that class in front of me and the other instructors to actually graduate. So we actually just graduated our first junior mechanics class. And as a celebration, we took them up to Lemoyne to the racetrack, and we had a great time. And so in that, in our youth program as well, we do different events. We just had our first ever Party for Peace 2 weeks ago, right before I left for Kenya, where we had over 400 people in attendance. We had riders come in from Lancaster, Philadelphia. We sent our bus to Baltimore with a bus driver to bring some guys up, because this is nothing in short, ladies and gentlemen, of groundbreaking major impact. That's what I call it all the time. Even on some of our shirts, we have major impact on the back of it, right? So in the youth program and the budgets that are happening, I just wanted to put some of these things up for you, because finance is function, and I do not pull a salary from Pedal for Peace. I'm not paid to do Pedal for Peace, which is a full-time situation, but I have 2 jobs that help me out. So it works out very well. And the expenditures are for between 50 to 150 youth per week. And we have everything from, at this point, we were able to work with the DA's office, and we qualified for a grant to get a computer lab this year coming up, because a lot of families were struggling with going virtual. A lot of parents didn't understand teaching that or understand the software. So we were able to get access to the Salem Square Community Library, where we'll now have a computer lab inside. And like I said, I went to your college, so some of my fraternity brothers, our sister sorority, are going to actually help come over and do some different tutoring, because obviously they got to qualify for some public service, because I'm a Kappa and we're huge on philanthropy. Well, Kappa Delta Phi, so we're north of the Mason-Dixon, and we're huge on philanthropy. So I kind of utilize that clutch in my fraternity, because I'm like, guys, you just need the hours and I need the help. So it works out, and they've been helping since we started in 2017. So this is like one of my pride and joys right now. As I was saying, Mr. Menzer helped us out, and we launched the first ever urban stadium race last year, where we had BMX USA came out. We literally took and had features built all over the park. Mr. Menzer let us pull off a clubhouse door. We took apart some gates. And these guys literally raced through the stadium. We had a custom race system set up from Missouri, where they would roll through this laser. When the wheel rolled through it, it started the timer. When they came through the finish line at the home base down on the field, on the caution track, it stopped. And what that evolved into now is us actually launching an actual BMX race team. Because a lot of these youth are extremely talented, but they're not your football or your basketball player. We love riding bikes, So it was like, if I could take this and incentivize better behavior in that way, where now we're collecting report cards, there can be no truancy issues, right? And I'm getting phone calls from parents that are crying and they're saying, thank you so much for everything you're doing. We never knew that a bike could do something so incredible in this life, where they're coming off of juvenile probation. I have 6 guys now, which isn't, like I said, we started early. I have 6 guys that are old enough to get jobs and they're working. I have guys that are going home. One story is I have a little guy named Peanut, right? And him and his brother, 8 and 9 years old, are 2 of my youngest guys. And the mom called me crying and I said, what's wrong? Because, in the city, there's a lot of different shootings. There's different things happening. I'm like, what's going on? And she said, thank you so much. I said, for what? She said, I bought an entertainment center and we didn't have the tools here to fix it. You let the boys borrow the tools. I came home, they put the whole entertainment system together for her, like the whole entertainment center, so it's the little stories like that almost reinvigorate a different level of hope, a different level of inspiration to me, because in servitude, a lot of times it feels like it's all going out, right? You're doing all these things that's going out. And it's the little things like that come back in. It's like, man, this is really working. 8 and 9-year-old kid put together an entertainment center. Their brother got home and had to check it later that night. His name is Mashari. He was over at the warehouse with us. But just the ability to be able to do that, and that these little guys they have no father in the household, they just ask me to borrow some Allen wrenches. I'm like, yeah, go ahead, guys, make sure you bring my tools back. That's my thing all the time. Like, if you take them out of the warehouse, make sure you bring my tools back, guys. So the ability to be able to now take and nurture these athletes in this way, where I was fortunate enough to be elected to vice president of the Revolution BMX racetrack now. So I was able to come on board, and we actually helped out with additional insurance for this season, so that not only can we have a race team, but we can take some of these little guys and try them out on the racetrack and see if they even like it in the first place, right? And my whole thing is, like I said, to be able to incentivize better behavior through experiences. So the outcome of development in 2021, based on 32 publicly operated weeks at full tilt, every year we help between 300 and 500 youth alone just in the York City area, thousands between Central PA and globally. I mean, just before I left, like I said, we had our first ever party for peace at the park. And just this past weekend, we were in Lancaster riding with a group that we ride with all the time. Our youth program runs on Tuesdays and Thursdays, where our average attendance is between, just about like 30 to 50 youth, depending on which. We have ride outs, we have events. Those averages between 60 to 90, averaging about 158 people. Times 8 is about 1,250 interactions. Now, COVID was a little different last year, so we had to really watch the way we navigated, just trying to keep everybody safe, And even myself, sometimes it gets a little difficult trying to ride a bike with a mask on. So we just had to make sure that we kept enough distance between everybody. This year, we're looking to graduate 54 junior mechanics. And one of our thing with our junior mechanics is at our actual bike shop, because it's a full service bike shop. When they graduate from that, we're able to not only apply some of the entrepreneurial curriculum that we've done there, but it gives them a chance to work hands-on in a situation, to be able to apply some of those concepts. Because we all know, we've went to school, we've gone to different trainings, and it's all theoretical until it's applied. I don't care who you are, you know what I mean? You could read an entire book on putting a bike together, but if you haven't tried to put the bike together yet, it's going to be a little difficult once you actually get at it, right? So our junior mechanics, if you want to work in the bike shop and actually be able to make a couple dollars a week, it's not like it's a high profit situation, but a lot of times they want to buy extra parts or get things off of Amazon. So some of my guys, we got them little Cash App cards now. So if people call us for maintenance, we have little mechanic backpacks that they have. So they go out and they'll service them, and people will just send it straight to their Cash App, or they'll send it to us, and then we send it to their Cash App, which is kind of a pretty cool thing that we've been able to do. So that'll be the student-operated bike shop. We have York City BMX race team that's launching. We run 4 main events every year with 250 plus people, and that pretty much comes down to about once a quarter that we're doing big rides or big events. We have a minimal of 50 bikes that are given away for our Christmas giveaways. And, I put up the costs, like when it came to sustainability and the program and the course of the year and everything that's happening. The outcome is building self-confidence, seeds of servitude, because to get a bike, if they need a bike, they have to build one for somebody else. the unification between the city. Most of our youth, even with the high crime and violence happening right now, consider Pedal for Peace to be a neutral zone. That's what, if you ask any youth in the city that you see on a bike, they'll call it a neutral zone for this reason. There's all types of different violence happening between different sides of town. Pedal for Peace is just about the only youth program where I have kids from everywhere. I have kids from Parkway, from North York. I have them from East End projects. I have them from the South Side. I have them from the West End that all come together for unity at our locations. And we ride and continually do that. And we have this thing, I call it one heartbeat. So they'll clap one time, they'll clap twice, and they'll hit their chest once. And that's because it's a brotherhood. It's like a family. And I want them to understand that. And that also attracts them in. Some of these guys feel lost. I have guys that tell me they're not going to live past 18. And I'm like, how is that even possible? That lack of hope. You're babies. You haven't even experienced any life yet. You haven't even really made any real mistakes yet. How do you think that you're not going to live past 18? So in saying that and having that neutral zone, first, it's very humbling, one. And two, it's reinvigorating to my spirit because it lets me know that we're getting somewhere. And that's how we break down some of the gang walls and some of the side of town violence that goes on. And that's the whole premise to why we made it Pedal the number 4 piece. It's not FOR. It's literally the number 4 on a compass, insinuating that we want to bring every side of town together, east, west, north, south. So, the unification, developing community contributors, inspiring urban entrepreneurialism. And I'm big on this because a lot of youth feel like outside of sports or selling drugs, they're not going to be able to get out of the situation that they're in. Oftentimes there's not a lot of people that if they make it to a certain level of success, they don't come back and show what that looks like. Where most of us all know statistically, you're much more likely to achieve being a doctor than you are making it to the NFL. I mean, being realistic, So it's important that people come back and put that on display, So the entrepreneurialism, and then, the extreme athletes, because obviously I'm probably a little crazy. I mean, I've knocked out these front teeth on bikes. I've broken an ulnar tibia down through a growth plate. I've had some hairline fractures and the other ankle, I think, last year. But that's what comes with the sport, right? Any sport that you play, there's going to be some things that happen. And then plus, I can't let the kids show me up all the time. You know what I mean? Sometimes I got to just send it. I got to jump off the stuff. But I've learned to calm down. I have to be honest. I've learned to calm down because the healing process isn't the same anymore. It's I found when I hit 34 or something, like it just happens. I'm like, man, why is my knee still sore? But it's okay. So, developing the bike techs and the guys that are working in the shop, as well as when we go to other cities, in our bus, we actually converted because it was a 25 passenger bus and I don't have a CDL, but I told them at the notary, like, if I have 25 people, I can't get the bikes in there. So what they did is they wrote it up as a 12 passenger bus plus the driver. And we pulled 13 seats out of the back and converted it into a bike shop and where we can also store our bikes. So when we go to other cities and we go to other places, we have a full workable shop in the back that we can hop out. We help fix kids' bikes in those areas that we're at, or we can fix our bikes when they break down, or I end up, it seems like, always relinquishing my bike when somebody's breaks down, and I end up going back to the bus and driving to meet everybody eventually. The outcome is safe kids. Like I said, we have 148, and that number is looking like it's practically going to double. Our official launch date is May 18th. And because of all the violence that is currently happening in the system, I'm having an influx of kids that is absolutely crazy. It's like a horrible thing happening in the city, but a really good thing for me because it is really hard for people to reach the age group that we've been able to just completely connect with and tap into. And I really love them, and it with my whole heart. It's not like I don't do it for the kudos, or we're not looking for accolades from anybody. We're literally creating safe spaces to keep kids safe so that they can be contributing members of society. Because if we cannot meet their basic necessities, as in food and keeping them safe, how do we expect communities to develop? Proud families come from that next. Like I was explaining about the mom and different parents and teachers from schools that have called, and principals that even call me on my phone right now, that if a kid's acting up in school, they're like, man, Kingsley, we can't get a hold of him. But when they put me on the phone with them, they're like, Mr. Kingsley, I'm sorry. And they're not sorry because I've done something super crazy with them. We've just been consistent with them. We've given them experiences. What does it cost to go camping? They call it the bro mansion. We take them out to these camping sites and out to the woods. And I can tell you what, everybody's hardcore from the blocks they're from until it's pitch black out in the middle of the woods. I'm not even kidding. I had a 14-year-old kid that was like my size pee in his tent. And then we were so upset. I'm like, bro, like, what are you doing? You could have, there's like nothing but field. He was like, they were talking about Jason, and I wasn't coming out the tent, Mr. Kingsley. I'm like, bro, you could have unzipped it. And he said, I wasn't getting, he was so serious. It was like, no, like, he didn't care if he was embarrassed. Anybody was laughing. He's like, I wasn't coming out of the tent. And I was like, bro, like, you could have came out here. You could have peed anywhere. Like, you could have just unzipped the door. He was like, Kingsley, I was not coming out. Like, it wasn't happening. And it was so funny because that same trip, there was all these deer, like across from where our tents were set up, there was all these deers in the field. And they swear to gosh, it was aliens. I'm like, guys, it's deers over there. So like, Mr. Kingsley, come look at this, some kind of alien. And we're just in tears crying at this point as we're like pointing in the field with this huge flashlight, watching the deers run away. And it's just amazing to be able to bring experiences and joy like that. And for a lot of us in here, my like I said, my father was military, so we grew up. Me and my brothers, we grew up camping our whole lives. I mean, how old were we, bro? Like 5, 6 years old. We were learning compasses and navigating through the woods in tents. And so to be able to bring these kind of experiences to these youth, that truly doesn't cost. That's what some hamburgers and hot dogs and waters. You know, it really doesn't cost a lot. But to pull them out of an environment and expand their mind. Napoleon Hill once said. And like I said, I know I have all these quotes and different things I reiterate to myself all the time. He said, whatever the mind of man conceives and believes it can achieve. But how can these youth conceive something beyond where they're at if they're never experiencing it or that they never see it, right? So what does it get down to? The life experiences. And all of that combined is absolutely priceless. It is priceless because now you're talking about 100 plus teenagers that are now attending school that had truancy issues, that are coming off of probation, that come from families where people weren't working jobs and maybe living off of welfare, that are working jobs. And it doesn't matter if it's Taco Bell's or McDonald's. You want to know why? Because I say to them, I said, isn't it worth working at Taco Bell for that $9, $10, $11 an hour in comparison to your friends that, yeah, they're balling right now for like 2 weeks selling drugs, but then they're locked up for 15 years. The numbers don't make sense. And we actually one day I have these whiteboards, these huge whiteboards on the wall. We actually did the numbers one time because I wanted to show them what it really looked like. Like, okay, this guy made 15 grand, but then he sat in jail for 15 years. You made $300 a week for the duration of 1 year. You're already further ahead, you know? And that, the ability to just open their mindset through experiences and incentivizing better behavior has done more maybe in my life sometimes than it is for even them, because it's when you're teaching, I've learned that to teach, sometimes you have to be a student. You know, sometimes I'm teaching them things, but I'm also learning so much from them all the time because things are consistently changing. And when there's growth, you know, progress is hard, but the blessing is in the process, you know, and that's the part that's so important. So as I'm winding up, I want to thank you so much for listening to a story that is uniquely just absolutely amazing. When people ask me about it, I tell them it's the greatest, hardest thing I've ever done in my life, you know? And, you know, now like I said, 4 years ago, we used to meet at a McDonald's. It was me and 4 guys, which one of my guys got killed, you know? And I don't think until that point, it really made sense to most of these youth how important the peace aspect of Pedal for Peace was. It was up until then, I feel like maybe to a lot of them, it was just a bike thing, you know? We get to go ride bikes. But now it's about the entirety of everything and groundbreaking major impact. And we have Pedal for Peace. We have Hub One, which is the bike shop. We're launching YSC BMX, which is York City BMX race team. And I love all my America stuff because all my international travel is amazing. I love traveling internationally, but there's no place like home. Seriously, there really is not. Like, what makes America great is the fact that we even have a middle class. You know, most of the countries that I've been into, and I've been to some superpowers, it's you have it or you don't. There's no support in between. So when I get to come back home and I look at our infrastructure and I look at our development and I look for what our country stands for, every single day I wake up and I want to perpetuate that message, not in word, not in lip service, but in action. And I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Brant. We have about time for 2 questions. And if
Okay.
you could repeat the question for
Yes,
our
ma'am.
virtual audience.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
Don't need to take all the questions. The first one is, look around this room, it's a lot of old folks here. And we don't do so much handyman stuff as we used to, and we all have duplicates of everything.
Yes, sir.
You need tools.
Always.
All
I
right?
can't get enough of them.
Why don't we get some information on that, and we'll get a drive from Rotary to get you, I know I've got 2 or 3 ratchet sets.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that would be great.
My second question is, on the BMX. You cannot use the BMX course that already exists out at Rudy Park.
Yes,
I
sir.
don't mean what Eric's doing at all, but I don't see that overly utilized.
Well, the race team is actually going to be racing up there at Revolution BMX Racetrack. And the event that we throw an event once a year at the actual stadium called the Urban Stadium Race, which is kind of like our fashion of like Red Bull. Yes, sir. Yep.
You are using you are able to use the BMX.
Yes, sir. I'm actually the vice president of the racetrack up there, John Rudy. Yep. Yes, sir, Mr. Mike.
Brant, first of all, thank you. We've been trying to get you in here for a lot of different weeks, live audience. You say you don't do this for platitudes, but that was awesome. The question is, what you represent is what many of us fight all the time of how can we make a difference in our community with our youth? And you're obviously doing it. So I'd just like to know whether you're involved with local give coming up, and secondly, what could Rotary do to enhance what you're doing to make it easier to connect with these people?
Yes, sir. All right. So we are involved in Give Local York, which happens this Friday, which is pretty awesome. That's an amazing event that supports so many programs in York. Our what's called pass through for our 501c3 nonprofit is Salem Square Community Association. So if you would like to help out with Pedal for Peace and our sustainability, you can go to Give Local York, and all you got to do is type in Salem Square, and you'll see their information and a Pedal for Peace link. Click up right underneath it. And as far as helping, finances function, but also time. It's practically. This year, we've brought on more staff, but up to date, it was practically myself, my fiance, my brother running all of this, which is, it's like I said, the greatest, hardest thing I've ever done, but the most worthwhile. Every great thing comes with great sacrifice. So if you want to help out, or like you said, sir, you have some tools and stuff like that, we have so many new guys coming that you'd be shocked, don't know what a ratchet set is or what a socket set is or how to put that on. So, I'm always even looking for gentlemen that come along that maybe want to just take an hour to teach some youth how to use some tools. And we have a storage space it's 1,700 square feet. So it's open. And the reason we got that was to help with the space, because we have a lot of youth. And the bike shop's only so big. So with COVID, we had to keep everybody safe. So, there's more than enough space. We have a plethora of masks, so that everybody stays safe from COVID. And, just servitude. Sometimes it's just the time. It's not always finance, that could help us out. Is that all? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wow. It's not many times that a speaker leaves me speechless, but Brant, that was amazing. Thank you for sharing your obvious passion, your love, your service to the youth in our community. It's no wonder that you've attracted so many youth to you personally, because you have a great can-do attitude, and to be in 11 countries in just 3.5 years, it really is amazing. You have a great energy about you, and you mentioned reinvigorating. And you're having a major impact in our community. It's just amazing. So thank you so much for joining us, all from 4 people at a Mickey D's, right? To 11 countries in 3.5 years. And now you have 148 youth following you from ages 11 to 18. Well, you obviously live being better every day. So thank you for bringing that message of hope to our community. And I think that Pedal for Peace is an opportunity for our club to support. And Brant, I didn't talk to you about this before, but we welcome you to join the Rotary Club of York. And there are almost 300 members of our club that are very generous. And if anyone's interested in sponsoring Brant to become a member, please contact me. I'd love to offer that to you. And Asa, thanks for joining us as well. So we have a token of appreciation for you, Brant. It's a book. It's called I'm So Angry by Cynthia Stevens Donnelly. And yes, Tom Donnelly's better half. This will be presented to the YMCA of Hanover, and I have a book plate over there to ask you to sign in honor of your visit with us today. Rotarians are meeting next week. Will feature a program by Brett, I'm thinking it's not Bert, it's Brett Elsner, right? Or is it Bert? Okay, Bert Elsner of Elsner Engineering. I need to get the name right for next year. So next week, we are planning for a hybrid format meeting, and we'll just hope that the internet and the Wi-Fi sticks with us. So happy Mother's Day in any way in which you're celebrating on Sunday. Happy Cinco de Mayo today. Our closing song for your enjoyment is Mariachi Sol del Mexico. They are performing Guadalajara. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you all next Wednesday back here. Thanks.